The X-Men universe is filled with so many intertwined story arcs and characters that it's almost impossible to do justice to every last one in the movies. While the comics may give us a more comprehensive glimpse into the lives of these mutants, the same can't be said for the film, as the creators have to make difficult decisions while telling a story that fits within 2 or 3 hours. Many times, the editors decide to delete scenes after they have already been shot, and today we shall be exploring every single deleted scene from the X-Men movies. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. X-Men. Storm teaching a class of young mutants. One of the many deleted scenes from the original X-Men movies includes a sequence where Storm teaches a class full of young minds and talks about the history of Christianity. As she asks a question, Jubilee raises her hand and answers it, while other mutants such as Rogue, Bobby, John and Kitty fool around with their powers and engage in conversation. Since Rogue has just enrolled, Bobby introduces himself to her and even asks her real name before extending a warm welcome to Mutant High. As the class ends, Storm tells them about an upcoming quiz, while Bobby finds Rogue and asks her to dinner. He offers to show her around, and Rogue wholeheartedly accepts his invitation. While he takes his leave, Storm waits back to talk to Rogue and check in on her. Rogue tells her that she has been alone for months and had no idea that places like these existed. She further wonders whether the professor can cure her condition, and Storm tells her that things don't work like that. Logan lurking through the walls to catch a glimpse of Scott's automotive class. While Logan peeks through the walls to observe Scott's class, he notices Jean standing by Scott's side as he teaches automotives to the young, aspiring mutants at Mutant High. Logan's extended conversation with Jean and Scott. While Jean takes Logan to his room, he wonders where she stays, and she tells him that she shares a room with Scott down the hall. Logan does not seem pleased with this and makes a snarky remark about how it must be her gift to be able to put up with Scott. It goes without saying that this does not sit right with Jean, and she retaliates by saying that she's telekinetic and telepathic. She displays her powers by closing a door without touching it, and Logan then asks her to read his mind. While she refuses to do so, Logan taunts her by saying that she is afraid that she might like him. He further suggests that Scott might be holding her back and that he is a little restrained to be with someone like Jean. Jean establishes that Scott's restraint is good, as he can exercise control over his powers instead of unleashing their full potential. Logan realizes he may not get the last word in this conversation, and he takes his leave when Jean stops him and agrees to read his mind. However, Scott soon shows up at the door, and Jean immediately bids Logan goodnight and takes her leave. Scott continues to linger at the door, and Logan asks him if he will ask him to stay away from Jean. However, Scott refuses to give Logan the satisfaction of getting to him, and he coolly establishes that he wouldn't be going out with Jean if he felt the need to ask others to stay away from her. He advises Logan to take his powers more seriously and comments on how it must be killing Logan to live with the fact that he saved his life. Scott then takes his leave, but soon after telling Logan to be more careful, as he will not be there to save him the next time. Bobby and Rogue spending time together. Bobby offers to walk Rogue to her dorm and asks her if she would like to meet him for lunch the next day. While Rogue's roommates sneak a look at them, Rogue agrees to see him again and rushes inside after bidding him goodbye. Xavier and Jean's deleted scene in Cerebro. While Charles Xavier seems stressed about their future, Jean insists on trying the Cerebro device and convinces Charles that she is ready for it. Charles reminds her that she lost control recently and even wonders if he should have ever involved her in any of this. Jean immediately reassures him by saying that she would not have had much of a life without him, and the two continue to discuss how Jean should be more cautious while reading others' minds. As they have a candid conversation, Charles declares that there are much safer places to practice her telepathic abilities, and reading Logan's mind at such an early stage is probably not a good idea. Logan and Scott's interaction in the Ready Room. While Cyclops, also known as Scott, puts on his uniform, he tells Logan that they must operate as a team to pull anything off successfully. Scott then asks him if he can follow any order, and Logan retaliates by asking him to give him any order. Scott asks him to wear one of his uniforms, and Logan inspects the piece of clothing in front of him in this deleted scene from the X-Men's underground base. X2, X-Men United. Mystique lurking through confidential files to find information on Cerebro. In a deleted scene, we see Mystique wander through the corridors of a security containment area before making her way to a computer. She manages to break through the security codes of this device and looks for confidential files on Eric and several others. She downloads all the information she can find on them before clicking on an icon titled Cerebro. After viewing the designs for Cerebro 1 and 2, she prints out any relevant information about this supercomputer before making a narrow escape. Storm locating a few captured students. While a bunch of her students end up being stuck in the pits of a room with no way of escape, they call out for help, and Storm soon locates them. As they cry out for help, Storm reassures them that she is coming to their rescue in this scene that did not make it to the final cut. Jubilee exploring the museum while Storm teaches her students. An extended film cut shows Storm teaching her students at the museum while Jubilee lingers in the background. She wanders around the place and stumbles across an exhibit about evolution and mutations. While Jubilee observes this exhibit, she demonstrates her powers and suffers from a painful spasm while two onlookers witness her display of powers. When Jean Grey tries to fly the X-Jet using her telekinetic powers. While Jean Grey operates the X-Jet in Storm's company, she decides to pilot the jet using her telekinetic abilities. Things go south as she loses control, and Storm immediately picks up on this and helps Jean snap out of her current state of mind. Rogue helping a bunch of students escape the mansion. A deleted scene shot during Stryker's attack on the mansion shows Rogue as she ushers a few students to safety. While she has to stay back to defend the place, Rogue guides the students to an exit and gives them clear directions to make their way out. As they ask Rogue to come with them, she encourages them to go ahead on their own and even warns them against revealing their mutant identities to anyone. Professor Xavier and Scott being trapped within Jason Stryker's illusions. A deleted scene shows Professor Xavier standing on his feet with the Cerebro device attached to his head, while Jason looks at him and frees him. The professor seems disillusioned by Jason's games, as he genuinely believes that Jason has freed him. He goes ahead and frees Scott, and the two of them come up with an escape plan. Unaware of the fact that they are still trapped within Jason's illusion, the two escape in a helicopter and head to the school. However, they soon realize that the mansion is empty and they briefly wander about looking for students. The professor finally suggests that they should part ways and that he will check on Cerebro. As he makes his way down the hall, we see Scott vanish in the background as his part in the illusion ends. Meanwhile, Professor X stumbles across Jason's little girl avatar and realizes what is happening. While this sequence is intriguing, it was sadly removed from the final cut as the test audience failed to process what was happening. An extended scene between Cyclops and Yuriko. An extended cut of Cyclops' fight with Yuriko sadly did not make it to the final cut or even the DVD release. In this scene, Cyclops uses two plastic nightsticks abandoned by prison guards to fight against Yuriko. X-Men: The Last Stand. An inside look into the manufacturing of weapons. One of the deleted scenes in X-Men: The Last Stand takes place within a factory where plastic weapons are being manufactured. The place is filled with several factory workers who attach gun parts, examine them, and pack them in huge boxes. When Beast contacted Trask to caution him about Magneto's plan. When Magneto decides to attack Worthington Labs, Beast takes it upon himself to ring up Trask at the Department of Homeland Security and warn him. An alternate cut of the X-Men boarding their jet. In this scene that did not make it to the film, the X-Men are seen in their uniforms as they board their jet. Wolverine and Bobby face each other and argue when Wolverine declares that a few of them will not be coming. While Bobby insists that they have trained for this, Wolverine talks about the risks and how they might not come back alive. Bobby insists that they are all X-Men and should fight together, and Wolverine begrudgingly agrees. We also see Beast comment on how he has kept his old uniform and they all board the jet at once. When Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, was unwilling to help Magneto out. After Magneto moves the bridge to Alcatraz, Phoenix watches the looks of terror on the civilians' faces as they are stuck on the roads. We see a shot of a young girl scared in the backseat of a car while Phoenix senses her fear. When Magneto tries to convince Phoenix to help him, she refuses to aid his soldiers and declares that he is trying to order her around like Charles. Storm's deadly water wave. During the battle, Storm uses her powers to create a huge wave of water, thereby engulfing a number of mutants in this wave. After trapping several enemy mutants, Storm electrifies the water and knocks them all out in one blow. Beast's impressive display of strength. In a brief, deleted sequence, Beast lunges at his opponents and throws several punches before finally breaking a mutant's neck. When Iceman freezes Fat. During the Great Battle, Iceman uses his powers to freeze Fat's body in place, while Colossus lunges at him and breaks him apart with just one blow. Alternate scene that includes Juggy, aka Juggernaut. In the alternate ending, Kitty and Leech stare at each other as Juggernaut breaks through the wall and declares his presence by saying, "Here's Juggy." When Magneto torments Wolverine. In a deleted scene, Magneto uses his powers to drag Wolverine's body towards him as the latter struggles to retain control over his physique. Magneto further torments him by twisting his body around on the ground. But Beast saves the day by sneaking up on Magneto and injecting him with a cure. Extended cut of Dark Phoenix's display of powers. As Jean loses control, she causes mass destruction in Alcatraz, and things start blowing up in the entire neighborhood. While everyone in the vicinity attempts to fall back on their feet, a zoomed out shot of the place shows how much harm she has caused. An alternate ending that marks the start of a new school year. One of the deleted scenes includes an alternate ending where Storm, Bobby and Beast warmly welcome the newly enrolled students. They seemed overjoyed at the number of students and comment on how they may have trouble accommodating them. Rogues return to the school in an alternate ending. In another alternate ending scene, Rogue returns to the school and talks to Bobby about how she couldn't find a cure. She apologizes to him and states that this is her authentic self after all. Bobby pulls her in for a hug and welcomes her back as this scene comes to an end. Another alternate ending where Logan returns to Canada. We see Logan returning to a bar in Alberta, and fans may recognize this place as the bar from the first X-Men movie. The bartender immediately pulls a gun out but lowers it at the sight of Logan. He further states that he remembers Logan and sits down with him to have a beer and talk about how Logan felt haunted by Jean, Charles and Scott's deaths. X-Men Origins. Wolverine. When Wolverine decides to leave Team X. One of the deleted scenes in the film includes Wolverine's departure from Team X after he stops believing in their cause. As he takes his leave, there is a cameo of a young Storm as she watches Logan take his leave. Wolverine's extended conversation with William Stryker after Kyla's betrayal. In a deleted scene that was made available on DVD and Blu-ray at a later date, we see Logan meet with William Stryker. Stryker tells him that Logan made Weapon 11 possible, but he refused to help on account of wanting a quiet life. He confesses that he had to find a way to make Logan cooperate, but he thought that revenge would be a strong motivator in his case. Logan Logan soon learns about Kyla's betrayal and that she worked alongside Stryker and kept an eye on Logan before faking her death. Moreover, Stryker weaponizes Kyla's mutation and enables her to hypnotize and influence others' decisions. While Logan expresses that what they have is real for him, Kyla looks at him and states that none of it is real. Stryker then offers to erase Logan's memories so that he can live without bearing the guilt of his actions. Logan addresses Kyla and tells her that he should have known better than to get fooled by her before agreeing to go through with the procedure. As Stryker begins erasing Logan's memories, Kyla asks Stryker to let go of her sister now that she has done everything he has asked for. Stryker does not seem ready to let her sister go, while Victor Creed shows up at the scene to face Stryker. This scene was not included in the film as director Gavin Hood couldn't think of a reason why Logan would agree to undergo such a procedure. An alternate ending where Logan ends up in Japan. In a deleted alternate ending scene, Logan is seen at a bar in Japan where the bartender makes conversation with him. When the bartender asks him if he is drinking to forget, Logan replies that he is drinking to remember. Victor and Stryker's phone conversation. A deleted scene from the movie shows Stryker reaching out to Victor through a phone call, who seems to have information on Wolverine and Wraith's whereabouts. Stryker learns that Victor gained this information through Dukes, and the scene ends with Victor moving towards Dukes to torture him to death. X-Men First Class. Eric's arrival at the Ministro Pistarini airport. As Eric reaches Argentina, he spots a mother with her son at the Ministro Pistarini airport, and the view takes him back to his childhood. He remembers how he had shared such moments with his mother before the Nazis took them away. Sebastian Shaw's deleted yacht scene. One deleted scene shows Sebastian Shaw hosting many Cuban military leaders on his yacht. He asks them to excuse him for a bit as he greets Colonel Henry, who is passing by on a boat. Charles's romantic encounter with Moira. While Charles and Moira have a conversation, he disappears in the blink of an eye before appearing behind her and greeting her again. Moira reprimands him for tricking her and tells him she knows he can peek into her mind. Charles tries to flirt with her and she asks him to read his mind for a reply. She shuts him down quickly and he gets a clear message and takes his leave. When Eric turns into a woman in an attempt to recruit Angel Salvador, Professor X and Eric Lancia visit her workplace and try to talk to her in private. While she entertains their offer, Professor X wins her over by using his powers to turn Eric into a woman. An extended scene of Charles using his powers to turn soldiers invisible. After the military forces intercept a truck full of soldiers, Charles realizes that the only way out is if he can turn them all invisible. As the officers open the truck shutters, Charles manages to trick them even though their guard dog senses human presence and goes into a frenzy. Charles later comments on how his powers don't work on animals, and it's quite a relief that they managed to pass undetected. A deleted sequence where Eric showcases his powers. As Eric passes by a horde of soldiers, he uses his powers to make two of them fall to the ground as he walks past them. However, the obstacles seem endless as another soldier shows up in his path, and Eric then uses his powers to make the soldier stab himself in the stomach without even going near him. An extended sequence of Emma Frost's future visions. An extended sequence of Emma Frost's vision of the future includes a scene at the White House where Shaw makes decisions about warfare and politics. As the vision ends, she looks at him and remarks on how the future seems so beautiful. An extended cut of Alex's training. A few scenes from Alex's training did not make it to the movies, including his attempt at attacking a dummy placed on the other end of the room. Alex advises Charles to leave the room and sets the place on fire while displaying his powers. Charles immediately rushes back in with a fire extinguisher and Alex gets into an argument with him and takes his leave. In a later sequence, Alex manages to attain some mastery over his powers while Charles and Hank remain on standby for assistance. Extended scenes of Banshee's training. While Charles and Moira help Banshee train, they are both quite taken aback by the sheer power that he holds. As Banshee lets out a blood-curdling scream, his power impacts both Charles and Moira, and they end up feeling nauseous. In another extended sequence, we see Banshee try his hand at flying, even though he seems quite hesitant to try. Sadly, he falls face first into a bush, while the rest of his audience laughs at his poor attempt. Hank and Mystique's deleted conversation. While working in a laboratory, Hank studies Mystique's DNA under a microscope and even comments on her incredible cellular structure. Mystique also takes a peek and says that she's beautiful on the inside. As they look at each other, Hank replies by saying that she's beautiful on the outside as well, before making advances at her. As he leans in to kiss her, Mystique looks away and declares that his comments hurt her before taking her leave. Charles and Moira's intimate moment. In this scene that sadly did not make it to the movie, Charles and Moira spend time alone and drink together. They seem to be enjoying each other's company, and the conversation takes a steamy turn as Moira initiates a kiss and Charles kisses her back. The Wolverine, an alternate ending to The Wolverine from 2013. In a deleted ending scene that takes place on a private jet, Yukio asks Wolverine if he has decided where to go. She proceeds to keep a suitcase in front of Logan before settling down in her seat, and he opens this case to find a yellow-brown Wolverine costume, much like the costume that appears in the comics. This comic-accurate costume set includes a cowl and gloves, and Yukio smiles at Wolverine and calls it interesting as the screen fades to black. X-Men: Days of Future Past. Wolverine's farewell. As the X-Men bid Wolverine goodbye, we see Logan passionately kiss Storm before he goes through with a mind transference procedure. While Storm takes her leave, Logan stands there momentarily with a painful expression on his face in this scene that did not make it to the final cut. When Logan attacks Hank. When the Sentinels are launching an attack on the President, Logan briefly snaps out of consciousness and goes rogue. In the midst of the frenzy, Logan and Hank both fall to the ground, and Logan feels quite disoriented. In this state of confusion, Logan tries to attack Hank with his sharp claws, but Hank reassures and calms him down. Deleted footage of Nixon grabbing his tape recorder. In this scene that barely makes it to the final cut, we spot Nixon in his office, surrounded by a horde of officers who rush to open the door to his bunker. While they open the door, Nixon walks past the bunker and runs to grab his tape recorder before heading to safety. Dr. Trask's arrests. While President Nixon investigates the damage caused by mutants, Trask looks over the body of a fallen Sentinel while one of Nixon's officers uncovers the truth about him. As it turns out, Trask had been selling weapons to rival countries such as Russia and China. Nixon comments that machines are not the answer to the mutant problem and passes an order for Trask's arrest. An alternate ending for Logan's recovery. While Mystique aids Logan's recovery in the actual film, there is an alternate ending where William Stryker comes across him and plays a role in his recovery. The Rogue Cut for X-Men: Days of Future Past. After X-Men: Days of Future Past proved to be quite a success, the creators released an extended cut of the film titled The Rogue Cut. This cut added about 17 minutes of extra footage to the original movie, presenting a subtly different version of the plot, highlighted by numerous changes to the story arc. Mystique and Beast's deleted conversation. After realizing that she has nowhere else to go, Mystique returns to Xavier's mansion in this subplot that did not make it to the film's original cut. She has a serious conversation with Beast, who even manages to fix Mystique's wounded leg. The two share a passionate kiss and transform into their mutant forms as things get heated. Mystique later sneaks into Cerebro and gets rid of it before getting into a heated argument with Charles, Hank, and Logan. An extended cut of a conversation between the Free Mutants, Sunspot, and Blink. While this conversation was deleted from the original film, the extended cut features the Free Mutants, Sunspot, and Blink having quite an extended discussion. While they have many more lines in this version, the scene also cuts to Bishop arguing intensely with Wolverine. The memorial scene in the X-Men base. The Rogue Cut features a memorial that takes place in the X-Men base, and we see Warpath lead the memorial and recite a prayer after lighting a candle. Iceman and Kitty's moment of passion. In this deleted scene, Iceman and Kitty share an intimate moment and end up kissing before she sends Wolverine back in time. Several instances of Logan conversing with mutants and humans alike. In one deleted scene, we find Logan returning to his car after killing the gangsters to find Gwen waiting for him. In another instance, Logan has quite an extended conversation with Hank and Charles where they discuss the internet. Logan later talks to Hank and comments on how smoking will give him cancer and wonders if he will live in the future. When Logan visits the Maximoff house, he has a conversation with Peter's younger sister when her mother shows up and asks the young girl to stop bothering Logan and instead talk to her older sister, who turns out to be the Scarlet Witch. Logan realizing that Rogue has taken over from Kitty. This extended cut shows Logan's reaction as he wakes up from his sleep to find that Rogue has taken over from Kitty. When the Sentinels locate the mutants, as it turns out, a piece of a Sentinel's body is stuck to the mutants' ship, making it quite easy for the rest of them to locate the mutants. Charles's conversation with a soldier. When Charles comes across a wheelchair-bound soldier, he engages with him and has a conversation where he states that his accident was a result of a so-called friendly fire. A subplot featuring Xavier, Magneto and Bobby on a mission. In this alternate cut, Xavier, Magneto and Bobby come together to rescue Rogue. After Wolverine stabbed Kitty, Rogue stepped up to take Kitty's role and ensure that Logan is sent back to the past. In the meantime, Kitty tries to get some rest as the strain of maintaining a temporal link to the past drains her body to a significant extent. While Xavier assumes that Rogue is dead, Bobby tells him that she is alive and being experimented on by the Sentinel's human agents in Cerebro. Since Xavier's mind cannot reach Cerebro, he takes it upon himself to free her and even teams up with Bobby and Magneto to rescue her. Bobby dies during this mission, but Magneto manages to break into the mansion and rescue Rogue under Xavier's guidance. When Bobby almost does not make it out alive, Rogue arrives at the mutants' hideout bearing bad news and informs Kitty that Bobby has failed to make it out alive. While Rogue expresses her sorrow, she also takes over Kitty's powers and manages to assert control over Wolverine's mind. Wolverine even starts feeling her presence, but we see that Rogue and Bobby are both alive and well after Wolverine alters the timeline. A post-credit scene featuring Trask. The Rogue Cut included a post-credit scene where we spot Trask in Magneto's old cell in the Pentagon. X-Men Apocalypse, when Alex Summers convinces Scott to attend Xavier's school. In this deleted scene, Alex Summers goes to Scott's room and greets him while he lies in bed with his eyes covered. While Alex attempts to reason with Scott and make him realize that he can't lie in bed with his eyes closed forever, Scott does not seem keen on making any lifestyle changes. Alex convinces him that he knows a good place and that they can visit Xavier's school since he also helped Alex gain control over his powers. Scott reluctantly agrees, and Alex then drives him to school. Professor Xavier teaching a class full of mutants. In this deleted scene, Professor X discusses the novel The Once and Future King in a class full of mutants. While most of them pay attention to him quietly, Jubilee does not shy away from commenting on the novel and expressing her views on it. Apocalypse's stealth in Cairo. While Apocalypse initially struggles to garner enough strength to get back on his feet, he soon attacks a man in Cairo. After killing this man, Apocalypse steals his robe and walks away in disguise. Alex bids goodbye to Scott at the school. After dropping Scott off at the school, Alex bids him goodbye and tells him not to get into too much trouble. Scott assures him that he will try his best, and Alex then takes his leave and gets into a car with Professor Xavier. when Beast gives a pair of glasses to Scott. While Scott gets used to the school, Beast approaches him and hands him a special pair of glasses. He assures Scott that the lenses in these glasses will refract his optic beams and keep them contained within their own vector field. Scott realizes he can now open his eyes without killing people, and Beast encourages him to try these glasses on. Jubilee soon approaches them and informs Beast that someone is waiting for him at the mansion's doors. An extended cut of the school's tour. While Mystique and Beast walk in the school corridors, she wonders what lies for them in the world beyond these walls. She says that the school is the same as always and that it is a beautiful place to hide from the world. Beast tells her that he has to show her something as the scene shifts to Jubilee and Kurt. Jubilee gives Kurt a school tour and shows him the dining hall where they get 3 meals and snacks daily. Kurt seems immensely grateful and comments that he sometimes had to wait all day to get a loaf of bread back home. He then asks Jubilee about her origins and seems quite excited to hear that she comes from Beverly Hills. The deleted mall sequence with a retro vibe. In this deleted scene that takes place against the backdrop of Safety Dance, a few mutants including Scott, Jean, Kurt and Jubilee go to the mall. This montage shows the mutants in a freeing environment where they are accepted and not shunned by their peers. They drop by the arcade where Jubilee uses her powers to charge an arcade machine so the others can play without getting tickets. Jean and Scott enjoy an arcade game and they later head to the food court to treat themselves to slush puppy drinks. This sequence is quite refreshing as we see 4 mutants be themselves, and Kurt even experiences a brain freeze due to the slushies. Scott, Jean and Jubilee head to a record store and run into another mutant, while Kurt heads off by himself to go to a shoe store. A young child in the store waves at him, but Kurt fails to find any shoes that match his unusual feet. At the end, the 4 of them watch a breakdance performance and Kurt enthusiastically joins in at the end. Moira and Beast piloting the jet together. While Moira finds herself in the co-pilot seat in the jet, she appears to be deep in thought. She eventually looks at Beast and tells him that the ride brings back memories. Professor X's deleted conversation with Storm. While Apocalypse destroys Cairo, Storm feels a whirlwind of emotions, and Professor X senses her turmoil. After sensing that she differs from other horsemen, he tries to reason with her and assures her that she is not a killer. Storm retaliates by saying that she comes from a different world and that she was raised in a world where superstition and dark religion mattered more than degrees. She further tells him that she barely survived her village and was treated like a curse by her family. Deleted scenes from the rebuilding of the X Mansion. In a deleted scene during the reconstruction of the X Mansion, Mystique and Charles have a conversation where he asks her to train the students for combat. In another scene, Scott tries out his new glasses and later comments on how he hopes the other kids don't call him Cyclops. Logan, when Jonah uses his powers to kill one of the Reavers. In a deleted scene where Jonah, one of the X-23 children, is being chased through the forest, he runs into one of the Reavers. Even though Jonah is a child, he has attained enough mastery over his powers to take control of the Reaver's body and use his puppeteering skills to make the man shoot himself. Sadly, this scene was deleted from the final cut because the creators did not want to show the young X-23 children to display such extraordinary powers. Moreover, James Mangold felt like the audience would have questioned why these children did not help Logan fight off X-24 if they wielded so much power. When Logan gets into trouble for speeding. In this deleted scene, Logan ends up speeding his car while traveling with Laura and Charles and gets into trouble with the cops. While Logan hands over his license and registration to the police officer, she asks him if the young girl in the passenger seat is his daughter. Laura remains quiet for the entire conversation and only replies by nodding her head. The policewoman gets suspicious of Logan, but Charles saves the day by convincing her they are a family traveling to Mount Rushmore. He jokes about how he keeps telling Logan that Mount Rushmore won't disappear if they take another day to complete the journey, and the policewoman finally takes her leave after handing Logan a ticket. The deleted dinner conversation at the Munson family home. While having dinner with the Munson family, Catherine, aka Mrs. Munson, asks Logan if he is married, and he hesitates before responding. In the meantime, Charles covers up for him and says that he used to be married but his wife has passed away. He adds to this by saying that his wife was Jean Grey and that she used to be a lovely pupil at his school. Charles then states that Logan killed her, and the Munsons stare at them in silence while Logan laughs it off. He says that Charles may be a little confused and thanks the Munsons for hosting dinner before rushing out of their home to avoid further drama. Caliban's death sequence. In this deleted scene that takes place after the Munson massacre, Logan gets a hold of Laura and takes her with him when he spots a fatally wounded Caliban crawling out of the wreckage. Logan spots his heavily burnt body just moments before Caliban succumbs to his wounds, and Logan has no option but to leave with Laura. Director James Mangold believed that the extended sequence did not do justice to Caliban's character, and he cut the scene short because he wanted Caliban to have a heroic death. Logan's deleted conversation with Bobby. While Logan sleeps in Eden, Bobby lingers around him and plays with Wolverine and Sabretooth action figures. He ends up waking Logan and asks him if Sabretooth is a real being. So far, Logan has maintained that most of the stuff they had read in the comics were lies. But at this point, he honestly tells Bobby that Sabretooth was real. He further tells him that they used to be a pair in a unique program where they did horrible things together. However, Bobby assures him that he is making up for these things by caring for Laura and the other kids, and Logan has a hard time accepting this. Donald Pierce's interaction with Xander Rice. While Donald Pierce gets ready in a medical tent, he comes across Xander Rice and shows him a picture of the coordinates to a fire road in the Badlands that had seemingly appeared in the X-Men comics. He then expresses his desire to get more information from Maria so they can locate the X-23 children, but sadly, this scene never made it to the final cut. X-Men Dark Phoenix. Jean's disappearance and Charles Xavier's realizations in X-Men Dark Phoenix. When Cyclops realizes that Jean is missing, he decides to bring her back, but Storm raises the question that she may not want to return. However, Cyclops seems indifferent and declares that she does not have a choice here, and Mystique then suggests that she may be able to make Jean see sense if only she can get close enough to her. At the UN, Jean realizes that all the gods are Skrulls in disguise, and she fights them off with the help of her Phoenix Force. After destroying an armada of Skrull ships, she bids Scott and Charles goodbye and returns to space. In a deleted sequence, Charles panics after realizing he can't sense her anymore. He feels pretty overwhelmed by his emotions and believes he is not as evolved as he thought. He gets in a car and decides to leave the Mutant Academy, and as he drives away, Jean's voice plays in the background as she talks about how we only discovered that the sun was the center of the solar system a few hundred years ago. She goes on to explain that there is so much that we don't know in the grand scheme of the universe, and we need to keep learning and growing as it is just the beginning. The New Mutants. Mirage's deleted speech that gives the mutants a sliver of hope. Mirage tells them that they got each other out of their cages, and they can manage to free themselves from this situation. While the other mutants consider this, Sam Guthrie points out that there are force fields around the windows and doors, and there is no way to get past that. Mirage suggests that they can kill the source, and with Illyana's support, the rest of the mutants step out of the room to deal with Dr. Reyes and free themselves from this facility. Sunspot and Illyana's conversation. While Sunspot sits out in the sun, Illyana takes a sip out of his drink while he asks her to let them know when she has figured out how to use her teleportation powers to transport them. She reminds him that she has asked him not to talk to her and soon walks away while he mutters under his breath and comments on how he can still at least look at her. Mirage and Wolfsbane's Secret Adventures. During nighttime, Mirage and Wolfsbane sneak into Illyana's room, and Wolfsbane inspects her bed and comes across a puppet. Wolfsbane comments on how they sometimes hear her talk to the puppet while Mirage picks up a marble ball and fidgets with it. Sadly for them, their adventure is cut short as Illyana steps out of the shower and kicks them out of her room. While Wolfsbane rushes out, Illyana asks Mirage to put her puppet down slowly and warns her against ever stepping into her room again. Sunspot and Mirage having a meal together. While Sunspot serves himself some food, he finds Mirage dining alone and asks her if anyone else is sitting there. She jokes about how her imaginary friends are sitting with her, and Sunspot comments on how she can't joke about these things while side-eyeing Illyana, who is busy eating lunch with her puppet. As Sunspot settles down in a seat against Mirage, he introduces himself formally and asks her about her experience so far. He then declares that they are the only sane people there and points out flaws in their peers. Sunspot tries to charm Mirage and claims that he gets her and that he can see a future where Mirage will get him too. However, she looks him straight in the eye and declares that he isn't her type. But he does not seem particularly affected by this. He points out that she can't be too picky since there are only 5 of them and tells her about his history. We learn that he has been here for 5 months, and the real reason why he has been sent off here is because his parents are one of the wealthiest people in Brazil and they can't accept a mutant son. Mirage's strange illusions. In this deleted sequence, we see Mirage lying in a room and slowly getting up as she feels snow falling on her face. However, she soon realizes that the white snow-like particles are blood, and she feels the room's walls closing in on her and take strange forms before a doctor checks up on her. Sam and Sunspot's basketball game. Sam and Sunspot engage in a friendly game of basketball, where Sam seems to be winning despite having only one functional leg. Their friendly match soon takes an aggressive turn as they try to one-up each other. However, Sunspot abruptly leaves the field and declares he needs a timeout to cool off. Dr. Reyes having a meeting with the mutants. In this deleted sequence, Dr. Reyes declares that the mutants' freedom will be restricted until further notice. When Wolfsbane objects to this, the doctor tells her that she was quite close to being released and that she is pretty disappointed in her. Dr. Reyes declares that they won't be allowed to step out of the building until she can ensure that their streak of insubordination comes to an end. And Sunspot wonders what to do in case he needs sunlight. Dr. Reyes simply drags a chair near the window and tells him to make do before finally declaring lockdown. Marvelous verdict. To sum it up, the X-Men franchise is filled with so many complex story arcs that it is undoubtedly overwhelming for the creators to do justice to all of these sequences in a 2-hour-long film. While most of these sequences did not make it to the big screen, we are glad to get a glimpse of these deleted scenes, and we hope you had a fun time exploring them with us. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.